here this year, both here, outside, in the Victorian building. So we really have ramped up to quite a long list of wonderful events for the community to participate in. And although this is the last event of the year, it's not the least by far. And we'll be starting up next year in a few weeks. And we definitely have a wonderful Black History concert, and of course into the end of February. And we'll see what we can do. Even if we can do something before that, we'll see if the weather cooperates. But I have a long list of entertainers who are ready to come in here and perform. So as we do for every event that we hold here, we dedicate it to someone who is buried at the cemetery. Why not? These are the people that made Queens in New York City what it is today. So for today's performance, we have this gentleman by the name of John H.J. Jackson. He didn't live very long, but he started out life in Middletown, Connecticut. He was born in 1867. We know who his parents were, but his father, Isaac, died in the early 1880s. And within a few years, John and his mother, Mary, had moved to Jamaica, Queens. We don't know what brought them here, but John became a farmer. And he married a woman named Emma Van Dorn. And the Van Dorn family had many members, and quite a few of them are buried here at Maple Grove. So they were a long-established family in Jamaica. Sadly, John died of pneumonia at age 38 in May 1906. And he was noted on his death certificate as a farmer living in Jamaica on Evergreen Street, which is now 164th Street. And his wife continued on. She lived in Jamaica. She had 3 girls and a son. She raised, most of them lived to majority, we believe, and we were able to trace a little bit of their lives. But certainly we remember her and we remember him, and they are buried here not far from the center with a lovely stone in the south quarter section. And so we remember John and his wife, Emma. So thank you for listening to our story. And there are many, many other stories here. There are over 117,000 people buried in the cemetery. And I have to get the latest count because I've been saying that number for quite a while. It's been going up. So one day we'll get the newest count. Maybe we're past 120, I don't know. But 2025 is going to be a special year. It'll be the 20th anniversary of the Friends of Maple Grove, and it's going to be the 150th anniversary of the opening of Maple Grove Cemetery. So we'll have some special things on the calendar for this coming year, and it will be very, very fun and very interesting. So without further ado, and just don't forget to silence your cell phones, and if you need to go downstairs, at the lower level are the restrooms. And we'll have some refreshments afterwards, and I hope you enjoy the program. So without further ado, we have Velma Thomas and her performers. And we welcome you to the Kwanzaa Celebration. Thank you.
Kwanzaa. What's Kwanzaa? I'm just going to tell you a little bit about it. Before we get started, we are going to have libations. And Dr. Yard is going to explain to you what the libation and why we do the libations.
Welcome. It's good to see each and every one of you guys. I'm so glad you mentioned about John Henry. I have 2 of my good friends here, Deborah and Rhonda, and her parents, her grandparents are also buried here. Oh. They didn't even know. So usually I would say I ask, it is my duty and obligation to ask for permission before I begin to speak. Is there anyone here that is over 90 years old?
I'm almost over. I'm 90 and 3/4.
Okay. May I have your permission to speak?
Yes, you may.
Thank you. We do libation as a way, we usually do libation as a way to call on our ancestors who came from across the ocean, from the west coast of Africa, and they were brought here to here in the Americas. We usually do libation with liquid. It could be water, it could be spirit. We call on those ancestors whose shoulders we stand on, and those yet to be born, because life is a concentric circle. We don't die, we multiply. So I usually do what you call a invocational prayer with the water, and I say, yeah, I do it in Yoruba, and I'll do it in Yoruba and in Haitian. I don't know if anybody in the room is Haitian. Any Haitian in the room? No. Okay, we will say, Omi tutu, Lofui, Ona tutu, Rafeshi wouldn't. Omi tutu, Ile tutu, Tutu ori, Tutu eshu, Tutu ori, Tutu esha, Tutu egun, Tutu ara, Eron lebabiz, Odimari. As it is above, so it is below. We call on all the ancestors from the east, west, south, and north. We call on all the good ones, the enlightened ones, those who can help us bring messages of healing to those of us who aspire to live in a world that is just. And now I invite you guys to call on your ancestors, because I know you're here. So I'm going to go back to plan, and I'm going to pour with libation. So call on the ancestors. Call on your good, enlightened ancestors as I pour with libation.
Jennifer Ruffin.
Colette Victor and Ibaye. Ibaye. Johari.
Ibaye.
Colette Victor.
Sandy
Curtis.
Curtis' birthday today.
Ibaye.
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 Frederick Douglass.
Ibaye. And calling on our ancestors, giving honor to them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Yao. In 1966, Dr. Mulana Karinga originated Kwanzaa to bring us all together. An African American celebration based on African traditions and culture. It begins December 26th and ends January 1st. Kwanzaa created an opportunity for African Americans to celebrate themselves and history, rather than simply imitate the practice of the dominant society. During this time, the Ungaza Saba, first fruits, the 7 principles of Kwanzaa, is practiced daily to help liberate our minds and lives. The 7 principles that celebrate family, community, and culture. And you have it before you on the papers that I've given out. Could you look at those? And I'd like you to read along with me the 7 principles. And I will say the word, and then you will say it in English, if you could do that for me. Okay. Umoja.
Umoja.
Unity. I want you to give me back. Umoja.
Unity.
Okay. Kuchachakalia.
Self-determination.
Ujima.
Collective work and responsibility.
Ujama.
Cooperative economics.
Nia.
Purpose.
Kuumba.
Creativity.
Imani.
Faith.
All right, thank you. And those are for you to keep, so that you will remember that you came here and you heard someone talk about Kwanzaa, so you know a little bit about Kwanzaa. And I'd like to continue with some songs, and you have those songs in front of you. And we'll start with the one at the bottom. If you're happy and you know it. If you're happy and you know it, Kwanzaa's here. If you're happy and you know it, Kwanzaa's here. Time to gather in first and celebrate our roots. If you're happy and you know it, Kwanzaa's here. Okay, let's get everybody in. Everybody has a sheet? Yes. You don't have a sheet over here? Yeah. Did you give him one? All three of them together? Right here. Sit down. Right. Okay.
Right here.
Give them all three.
Anyone else? If there's anybody else who needs a baby kit.
Let's try that again. Everyone has a sheet? I'd like you to have all three pieces so that you can get to have them all.
Everybody good?
Okay, let's go. If you're happy and you know it, Kwanzaa's here. If you're happy and you know it, Kwanzaa's here. Time to gather in first fruits and celebrate our roots. If you're happy and you know it, Kwanzaa's here. Do it by yourself, come on. If you're happy and you know it, Kwanzaa's here. If you're happy and you know it, Kwanzaa's here. Time to gather in first fruits and to celebrate our roots. If you're happy and you know it, Kwanzaa's here. I think you got it. Let's try it one more time. If you're happy and you know it, Kwanzaa's here. If you're happy and you know it, Kwanzaa's here. Time to gather in first fruits and to celebrate our roots. If you're happy and you know it, Kwanzaa's here. All right, let's try the candle song. That's the first one at the top. Everyone has a sheet? I see someone over there looking. You don't have a sheet? Lady in red? Yeah. You have one. Okay. Candle song. The Farmer in the Dell is to the tune of the Farmer in the Dell. Let's go. Red candle shine. The red candle shine. When it's time for Kwanzaa, the red candle shine. The green candle shine. The green candle shine. When it's time for Kwanzaa, the green candle shine. The black candle shines. The black candle shines. When it's time for Kwanzaa, the black candle shines. And now you need to look over here at the candles, and you see that two of them shining. And the way that we do the lighting of the candles, could you tell us?
Okay.
Dr. Young?
So we have the candle, and in Swahili, Kwanzaa is a Swahili word, and the candles are called mashuba. And we start off with the black candle, and that's unity, umoja. Then we go to our facing our, the left, and we light the second candle for the second day, which would be December 27th. And then we alternate to the green. On the third day, back to the red, back to the green, back to the red, back to the green. And the last day is the 1st of January. That's how we do the candles.
Right. Thank you. And you have the definition of the principles in front of you. I won't go through them because I think that they're self-explanatory. And so at this time, we will have Dr. Yah to share some stories that hook up with the principles, the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. Oh, could you silence your phones? Yes.
Okay, my name is Dr. Yah Ilombe, and I am from Haiti. And Haiti is a Taínos word. And the Taínos were the original inhabitants in the Caribbean island. My elders told me that the real meaning of Haiti is sacred mother land. Okay? And I wanted to find out, did you know? So I also want to give you a little bit more about Haiti, but I'm going to do it in the way of, did you know that Haiti became the location of the first successful rebellion of enslaved people in Austria? Not history, Austria. Did you know that Haiti was the first nation to permanently abolish slavery? Did you know that Haiti was the first free black nation outside of the African continent? Did you know? Did you know that Haiti in 1804 became the first black empire in the Americas? Did you know that? No. Okay. Have you ever been to the Caribbean? Yes. Did you know that Haiti is located between the Caribbean Sea and the North Atlantic Ocean? Okay. Did you know that the closest neighbors is Cuba on the northwest and Jamaica on the west? This one you might know. Did you know that Haiti shares the island with the Dominican Republic? Yes. All right. Okay. So now you know. That is not all I want you to know. In the heart of Haiti, my country, where our mountain kiss the sky and our ocean whisper secret unto the land, there's a story that resonates throughout the land, passed down through generation, transcending time and space. It is called Ibolele, a melody that calls on the memories of humanity, inviting everyone who hears it to remember and to connect with their past and to honor the spirit that guides them. And it goes like this. Ibolele, Ibolele, oh, Ibolele, oh, Maya, Andu, Padre, oh, Simpela, Legometela, Simpela, Legometela, Simpela, Legometela, Lita, Monteta, Seibo. Would you like to sing with me a little bit? Can you do it? All right, let's try it. Ibolele, 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 oh, Ibolele, oh, Ibolele, oh, Ibolele, oh, Mama, Mama, Pamun Padre, oh, thank you. Ibolele, yes, that's right. Okay, Ibolele calls on that force that remembers everything. The second paragraph says, if my grandmama were here, she would have taught me the warrior dance. She would have taught me how to defend myself. Okay. The essence of Ibolele, the song Ibolele, is rooted deeply in the history of the Igbo people, who once thrived on the west coast of Africa. They were a proud people who were self-governing. They were known for their very artistic culture, their unwavering spirit. The Igbos lived in harmony with each other. Their lives were woven together by tradition, by profound respect for their ancestors. They were traders, they were artists, they were warriors. But above all, they were free. So this is the principle of Umoja. They live in togetherness, unity with the family and with their community. Yet, the wind of change blew harshly in the 1500s. On August 31st, 1531, the date of my birthday, the Igbos were in preparation of their yearly harvest festival, a time when family from all over the land, grandparents, uncle, people from the back land came to celebrate their bountiful crops and rich tradition in the center of a town called Yako that was close to the shores. As the European slavers descended on their land with advanced arm, musket, new weapon of destruction, in that moment, the festival faded in the background of dread as the raiders present appeared larger and threatening. The laughters of children was replaced by cry of alarm, and the joyous preparation for celebration turned into a desperate fight for survival. The Igbos warriors rallied together to defend their land, to fight. They signaled the women, the children, the elders to retreat, to seek refuge in the mountains or in the dense forests. But many of the Igbos, with their fierce pride and indomitable wills, were torn from their land, torn from their ancestral land, from their home, from their families, from the sacred connection they had with their environment, as they were being herded like cattle. They passed through this 14-foot tall metal door, and above it read the sign that said, "The door of no return," as they were being taken onto the ship to be shipped, to be transported as cargoes, stripped of their humanities. This marked the beginning of a harrowing journey into the unknown. As they were being forcibly transported on the Atlantic Ocean, many of them took their lives. They chose death over enslavement. They gave their lives to the spirit of the water, rather than be transported as cargoes or to be bound to a life of chain. They gave their life to their orishas. Orishas are divine spirit that the ancestors used to invoke in West Africa. They would, every chance they got, they would jump overboard. They would jump into the ocean, leaping, their spirit soaring free, while their voice mingled with the wave as they sing the song of defiance. Because of their act of bravery, they were transformed into eternal guardian of the spirit of water. But even in the face of despair, the Igbos held on to their memories. They sang songs from their homeland about the dances that celebrated life and resilience. They remembered the Igbo dance. They remembered the warrior dance that embodied their strength and their spirit. It was said that there was a young girl on the voyage who would often daydream if I was there when my grandmama was there. She would have taught me how to defend myself and how to honor my ancestors. When the slaver ship would arrive on the shores of the Americas with their human cargoes, some were taken to what was known as Hispaniola, today Haiti. The others would be taken to the other islands of the Caribbean. The Eagles, they brought with them not only their bodies naked, but they brought with them their culture, their customs, their fighting power, and their ways of life. While awaiting for the rebirth of Haiti, the Igbo recognized from the very beginning that they were on new land, despite having lived there for centuries. They preserved their ancestral tradition and practices. And the Igbo song, which helped them to maintain the spiritual connection with their homeland in West Africa. As the sun set over the mountains of Haiti, the sound of the drum beats fills the air. The people gather to worship, to honor the heritage. They start singing the song, Ibo lele, Ibo lele, oh, Ibo lele, oh, moya mango monfafeyo. Their voice rising together. The sound, the beat of the pulse of the drum, as dancers move gracefully, embodying the strength and resilience of their ancestors. Each dance step symbolizing the breaking of chains of oppression. Each movement weaving stories of struggle and triumph passed down through the generation. Each rhythm pulsating with the heartbeat of an ancestor who refused to be forgotten. In that moment, they connect to their past, to the warrior who continued to dance for freedom, and to the spirit who guides them still. And so, the song continues, a timeless reminder of the memories of humanity. Never forgotten, are never lost. They live in the heart of those who dare to remember, who dare to dance, who dare to sing the song. Ibolele, the force that remembers, binds them together, a legacy that will never fade. So this story encompasses the principle of umoja, togetherness, and also kujitabulia, where because of self-determination, they know they had to fight. And this fighting spirit was passed on to the next generation. And it continued to be passed on. Thank you.
Now we will have another storyteller, Luso Slater, who is also a percussionist. Luso.
rhythm is called the bone drum rhythm. And it originates from a place called St. Vincent and the Grenadines in the Caribbean. For those who don't know where that is, that's close to Barbados. Everybody know what Barbados? Yes. You see, if you throw something in the water in Barbados, it would end up in St. Vincent. A matter of fact, when some fishermen at sea get lost, they call St. Vincent. Have you seen our fishermen? They're lost at sea. So don't worry, it's safe and sound in St. Vincent. Anything you throw in the water. And that is where I'm from. And I was raised in a very small village called Love Village. And it was surrounded by mountains. And those were the farmlands. And the life of the village reflects agriculture. As a matter of fact, I still vividly remember the names of my neighbor. Was a man named Mr. Warman. They said he fought in 1941. But everybody called him Warman. And his wife. Then there was Mr. Barrington. And there was Old Brown. And there was Mr. DuPont. And those were the farmers in the area. As a matter of fact, when we were little boys, and when you hear they would have put this banana day, shipment day, because we used to export bananas to Britain. Before the World Trade Organization say, okay, level the playing field, and they kill bananas. But as a little boy, I remember when it's school time, we're not allowed to go and help in the morning because school time, and parents were strict about school. So after school, we go up to the fields, and if there's a bunch of banana, Hannah banana, we bring it on our head, and we pile them up along with everybody else. The whole village was involved in that scenario. And we would do that. People working together, and so farmers were able to get the shipment out because everybody collectively moved together. Some had large plots of land, and this was up the hill. And in order to make a business successful, they couldn't pay each other any money. So what the exchange was labor. So next week, you would go by Mr. Warman, 4 of us, 5 of us, 4 of the farmers, and help him till the whole field. And the other week, some would go with Mr. DuPont. The other week, some would go with Old Brown. And so the process continued. So collectively, they worked together and be able to produce and reap that crop and also planting. But another phenomenon that happened too is that back in those days, now I am talking about the 60s, I'm talking about colonial days. Yes, I'm older than land you here. Okay, in the 60s, colonial days, we were controlled by the British. And they were responsible for education, for security, and international affairs. The rest you had to do, feed yourself and take care of yourself. And organize your own housing because nobody was giving you a house. But we have a house culture because from a little kid you've been told, boy, listen to me. If there's a real man, you have to stand on your own floor. That inculcated in us. So there was a kind of house culture behavior. So you might be living with your parents and build up a little shack in the back, or you may have children as you grow older, and your house is in the back, but then you get your own piece of land now. So you have to move your house and relocate it. Boy, how are we going to do that? They would round up all the men in the village and some of the women, and they would plan this phenomenon. If it's on a Sunday, it has to be early in the morning. But it's preferable on a Saturday. because we were church-going folks. So there it is. A whole side of a house, you see like 20 touching man going down the street. And so the same thing with the flooring, lift up in the air. And the roof, with all the galvanized one side. And the woman would be there, and they would do all the food. There would be all kinds of food. There would be pork, there would be fish, there would be rice, there would be provisions, and all kinds of vegetables and cakes. Because you have to feed those men work because they work a whole day. But bucket and short, before the sun goes down at 6 o'clock in the evening, you can sleep in that house because everybody will work collectively and put that house together. And the next thing you see, the next day they will just move it up with one or two little furniture when they have to move into that house. But that, in a sense, called for some kind of money. And back there then, like, if you're not a policeman, you're not a nurse, or you may have a little job in the civil servants, in the treasury or somewhere, the rest of the country and people have to find some kind of economic avenue. And one of the things that dawned on me is when my grandmother said, take this money and carry it to Miss Mabel. It's Miss Susu money. Don't drop the money at all in the boy. Otherwise, you'll be going to be mine. And I said, Susu. Then I realized about 20 people been putting money together, pooling money together. So let's say the Susu run for 12 weeks. 1 week you would get yours. The next week somebody would get theirs. And the next week, and the next week, and the next week. So in a way, it was like an economic engine. Because at the time when you get your money, you have something that you want to do. I remember my parents would take their money when it come close to when school opened. So I would get my one pair of shoes for the year, and my one khaki pants, and my 2 little shirts. That money from the Susu would provide that. In certain cases, that money, they put that money together, and they were able to provide food for the moving of the house. Some accumulate money that they would send their children abroad, pay the passage. And some would open a little business. So that money, that Susu, in a way, was like the forerunner of the cooperative. And right here in America, they bring that tradition with them. I remember my auntie, here still in America, every time Christmas time comes, we'd send the barrels home. Now we have a tradition when you're able to send home a barrel. Like people from Africa and the Caribbean and different parts remember that the folks home. And Christmas time and the holiday time is a special tradition for them. For us, it's a time of giving and a time of giving back, a time to remember your family. So, here in America still, they would throw that Susu money. And they would buy and fill that barrel and send home that Susu money to their families back home. And so, when I hear about Kwanzaa and Ujima and Ujama, that is the same principle, cooperative economics, collective work and responsibility, how we work together, how we lift up each other, how we carry each other, how we support each other, and finding different needs. And Kalumba too, yes. And if you want to call it some self-determination, yes, all of that is involved in it too. And unity too. So the whole principle about Kwanzaa the principles about life, and life about people, how we, work together, how we support each other in different ways. That's my story. Thank you.
This is a sequel to the story. Okay, I shared with you guys. And this is forever. This is the story. Master Evils. In the heart of the evil land, where the sun kissed the earth with golden rays and rivers sang song of ancient wisdom, there lived a group of revered leaders known as the Master Evils. As the dark cloud of European slavery raids began to loom over the horizon, fear gripped the hearts of the evil people. News of the raids spread like wildfire, and with it came tales of the horror that await those who were captured. Families were torn apart, and communities were shattered. Yet amidst the despair, a flicker of hope emerged in the form of Master Evils. These men and women were not just leaders, they were the custodians of their people's culture and keepers of their history, the guardians of their souls. They were the embodiment of strength, wisdom, and spiritual power. They have connection to the spiritual realm and ability to commune with the ancestors. These Master Evils would volunteer for the raids and be captured so they may guide and protect their people, offering them comfort in their darkest hours. This is a story that I was told, and I put it together about these Master Evils. One such Master Evil was named Namdi. He was known for his deep connection to the spiritual realm and his ability to commune with the ancestors. Namdi had a vision, a calling that urged him to volunteer for the raids. He understood that if he were to be captured, he could guide and protect the people, offering them comfort in their darkest hours. His heart was heavy with the weight of his decision, but he knew it was a sacrifice he had to make. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a fiery glow across the land, Namdi gathered the elders and with his deep, raspy voice spoke of his plan. I will go, he declared, his voice steady and resolute. I will walk into the jaws of the beast, not as a victim, but as a protector. I will carry the spirit of our ancestor with me. I will ensure that our stories are never forgotten. The elders, though filled with sorrow, clutching their staff, with pain expression, understood the depth of Namdi's commitment. They blessed him with sacred herbs and whispered prayers into the night, invoking the spirit to guide and protect him on his journey. When the slavers arrived in the early morning, as the sun was rising in the east, Namdi stood tall among his people, a beacon of strength. As the raiders descended upon the village, he raised his arm and called upon the spirit of his ancestors. A powerful wind swept through the village, swirling around him, and the raiders hesitated, momentarily taken aback by the force of his presence. Namdi willingly stepped forward, allowing himself to be captured. As he was taken aboard the ship, he felt the weight of his people, pain, but he also felt the strength of their love and the power of their spirits surrounding him. He knew he was not alone. On the ship, the conditions were brutal, and despair hung thick in the air. But Namdi, with the unwavering spirit, became a source of comfort to his fellow captives. He shared stories of their ancestors, tales of bravery and resilience, reminding them of their rich heritage. He led them in songs that echoed through the dark holes of the ships, lifting their spirit and instilling hope. As days turned into weeks, Namdi present became a guiding light. He taught the fellow captive to connect with their inner strength, to remember who they were, and to hold on to their dreams of freedom. He would often close his eyes and reach out to the spiritual realm, seeking guidance and strength for his people. One fateful night, as the ship sailed under the blanket of stars, Namdi felt a surge of energy. The spirit of the ancestors surrounded him, whispering words of encouragement. He knew it was time to act. He gathered the captive and shared his plan, a daring escape that would require their unity and courage. With the moon as their witness, they executed their plan. Namdi led the charge, his heart pounded with the rhythm of their ancestors' drum. They fought with the strength of 1,000 warriors, reclaiming their freedom from the clutches of their captors. The ship became a battleground, but Namdi's spirit shone brightly, guiding them through the chaos. In the end, they emerged victorious, escaping into the night, their hearts filled with the song of their ancestors. Namdi and his fellow captives returned to their homeland, where they were welcomed as heroes. The master evil had not only protected their people, but had also ignited a flame of resistance that would burn brightly in the heart of the evil for generations to come. From that day forward, the legend of Namdi and the master evils spread far and wide. They became symbols of hope and resilience, reminding their people that even in the darkest of time, the spirit of their ancestor would always guide them. And so the master evils continue to stand as guardian of their culture, their story woven into the very fabric of Igbo identity, forever celebrated and cherished. This story was inspired by La Amistad. I don't know if you guys have heard of La Amistad. Yes. So this story talks about all the principles, as far as I'm concerned. Which principle do you think it covered? Definitely faith, that's right. They had faith in their leader and faith in the victory of their struggle for justice. Any other? You look at your sheet. Unity, that's right. That's right, togetherness as a community. Kujichagulia, self-determination. Ujima, working together. Nia, their purpose. And Kuumba, creativity. Okay? They wanted to leave and be back and create a better world for justice. Yes. All right. Thank you.
The program that we presented is presented by the African Folk Heritage Circle, which was originally originated by Dr. Joyce Duncan, who is now an ancestor. And she started the program. It is started the organization, the African Folk Heritage Circle. It is a chapter of the National Association of Black Storytellers. And the National Association of Black Storytellers meets once a year. This year they met in Buffalo, where there was no snow, and it was wonderful. And the African Folk Heritage Circle is about 25 years old. And we used to meet at Sisters Uptown Bookstore in Harlem. And since that time, after Dr. Joyce passed away, I have been in charge, and I'm getting a little old. I'll be 90, I'm 90 and 3/4 because I'll be 91 in February. And Russo, Slater, and Dr. Yar are members of the African Folk Heritage Circle, and they have told stories that, as you see, uplift the principles, the 7 principles of Kwanzaa. We also have other programs. There's little small pieces of paper if you want to be on our mailing list. See Rainbow D, she will, if you haven't already filled out, and we will let you know when we have other activities. There is a program tomorrow if you want to know more about Kwanzaa. I don't have enough for everyone, but whoever doesn't receive one, maybe you can take a picture of it. And so it is Kwanzaa. It will be given by the LGBTQ Kwanzaa Celebration. This is their 47th annual, and it will be held in Harlem at the Sage Center on 143rd Street. And it's free. All they ask you to do is to bring a pot. It's a potluck. So bring a meal. Not enough for 30 people, but it's enough. It's sharing, you know what a potluck is. And so that will be tomorrow from 2 to 5. And that will be the this is Unity Kuchichabalia, and the next one is Ujima. So that will be celebrating Kwanzaa, and as she indicated, Dr. Yar indicated, the last day is January 1st. At this time, I would like to bring up our poet of today. And where's Helen?
Here I am.
Oh, there she is.
Here I am.
You'd like to introduce?
Yeah.
Well, we would like to welcome back a great poet, our friend David Mills, who is inspired by what he sees around him. And we told him the stories of many African Americans who were buried here at Maple Grove. The story of Millie Tunnell, who was born to slavery, but became free and came to the town of Jamaica with her family and lived the rest of her life in freedom here, and is buried in a plot. It was an unmarked grave. And we found her story through the newspapers, and we created a monument for her to commemorate not just her life, but the life of the other members of her family that are buried here in Maple Grove. And so David was inspired by her story too. So welcome, David Mills.
Thank you, Helen. Happy Kwanzaa, everyone. Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah. Happy King's Day. Dedicated to greetings to Haiti, Sudan, Palestine, Syria, and friends. Anyway, I actually also wrote about George Johnson. If any of you are familiar with him, he's also buried out here. He's the first African-American recording star and might be the first recording star, period, in this country. And also Victoria Earl Matthews, who's also buried here, who was a womanist, was part of the early settlement movement like Henry Street. Her place was on the east side in the 80s initially. The building is still up near the Schomburg, like 135th Street off Malcolm X Boulevard. She was a fiction writer, a journalist. She might have actually written for the New York Times. But anyway, so I've written about 3 individuals buried here, and hopefully one of them will be showing up in a published book sooner than you can imagine, but I'll keep that quiet. So I'm going to read about Margaret, who was enslaved to Rufus King, who was a lesser founding father who had a house in, or still has a house in Jamaica, Queens. And I'll also read about him. This is coming out of a grant, not unlike the ones that the other work was about. And there are 4 steps, the servant steps in the back of the house, and they're kind of dented in the middle, so I'm sort of imagining, because there's only like a couple of sentences about Margaret in a letter that one of the kings wrote, so I was sort of having to invent her backstory. So this is called Stair Well. And they don't know if she was enslaved to King for 9 months or a decade. He was supposedly an anti-slavery activist. He was, but you know, complicated stories like most of us have, right? Stair Well. 9 months, a decade. There is the question of why should this raise a question? As if the mind were a shy 6th grader's hand. But toward the back of the house were 4 wooden steps, which raises another question. Were they maple? There is no question they were the servant stairs. There is no question that the navel of each step droops like a pendulous bottom lip, surprised by something. Maybe a question it couldn't answer. I want to assume and not question that you and other servants' body weight, in your case between 9 months and up to a decade, in those just over 30 letters, 10 syllables, and 8 words, lurks another question, like a gumshoe lighting a cigarette in a narrow alleyway of the alphabet, contributed to those 4 lips and what you might have carried up those wooden stairs. Did they creak? Did you pause between the 2nd and 3rd to catch your breath? Did you giggle or whisper as you squeezed past in profile something to one of the Irish servants who was certainly being paid? Did you learn how to count climbing and coming down those stairs? What was beyond the landing when you turned to head up the next set? The weight of all those questions makes the mark that lets a reader know there is a question hunched even further. So much so, the mark might just fall over and find itself splayed on this page's sparkling vertical floor. Find it being derelict of duty of saying, hey reader, now you see me? It's an interrogation. Find it being derelict of the duty of saying, hey reader, now you see me? That's an interrogation. Now you don't. That's a statement. Oh, what to do about all these Margaret, question marks. This is called meadowsweet, and meadowsweet is an herb that's used to reduce pain. Rufus King's son was a doctor, and when he was dying, he came to try to help out his father. King was an ambassador to England. He was the first U.S. senator from New York. He was born in Maine. I mentioned he was an anti-slavery activist. He actually tried to get the Missouri Compromise to be knocked down, fought against slavery being brought into Louisiana territories after the Louisiana Purchase, and also kept it out of the Northwest Territories, which was part of the Northwest Ordinance. Redcoats of the British. His son's nickname, who was Freddie the Doctor, they called him Fitty, like 50 Cent, you know. I always say, Rufus King, he sounds like a brother, Rufus King. How many white guys do you know named Rufus King? The humors are, 4 different parts of the body. You don't have to get into all the technical stuff. And King was a great orator, and so was his son. His wife's name was Mary. And a sash window is just the number of panes, in the window. So it's called meadowsweet. When you are your father's final doctor, and with your stethoscope as an additional ear, you accept his soul no longer longs to bicker with what the soil gently asks. When your brother John, serving as chef d'affaires, arrives from London, having sailed from where your father had been sent to a little over a dozen years after he had been instrumental in kicking the redcoats off the cocksure continent, that your father had ventured to Britain as minister, sailed as a key erstwhile ingredient in the recipe of the colonial insurrection. There, 7 years, he was the first time, just several months, the next, a quarter century later. For while he was across the Atlantic, the illness that would claim him began laying down its chilly demands. And when you are the youngest child, such that the king brood ceased itself on a lucky number, but you feel anything but lucky, that is, as your father's eyes eye into your eyes, for his fever and ending aches you administered opium and meadowsweet, thought about his humors, wondered if you should try to balance them with bleeding. And though to many he was only a founding father, he was your father. And now you were trying against time to find time with him. Trying you, Fiddy, the chatterbox, for once to listen. Of late, you had not been practicing your practice of medicine, but lecturing, as your father had in the Senate, on slavery's unbendable sins. You lectured on the blueprint of the vocal organ, the voice box, the vocal cords, the windpipe. You lectured on the human music you and your father made such ebullient use of. From then on, and then on April 29, 1827, your father taught you his last lecture and his pliant design. You earthed him in Grace Churchyard, between his raven-haired Mary and a daughter-in-law, interred 4 minutes walking on 2 feet or 1,000 feet from, and at least 6 feet under his bowed dining room window, where he surely dabbed the corners of his mouth that had been so mighty in the Senate, yet quiet over dinner. After supper, hands braided behind his back, leaning slightly, he likely gazed out that 6-over-6 sash window, eyes dining on Mary's headstone. Now he too would lay repose beneath a marble stone and Grace's Episcopal steeple. That dining room window, thinned by emptiness, might also gaze, possibly in longing, wondering if your father might return for supper or a sip. If you don't mind, I might just sit on this chair and do it from here. You can hear me okay, right? Yeah. I'm not trying to do like Laurel and Hardy or Adam. All right, this is another piece for Margaret. So if you look on the Rufus King Manor House website, thank you, sir. They have like a section on the family and history of the house, and then they have one on the workers. And bless you. And I found it interesting. There were a number of workers who worked there, many of them Irish immigrants, and they give like descriptions, their job, years they worked there, and specific descriptions of the work they did. And there were also African Americans who worked for King. They don't stipulate which, if any of them are African American. There are a few they don't say what their ethnicity is. But the last person that's mentioned is Margaret. And all it says is 1812 to 1829 with a C for circa and just made. And it made me wonder, and obviously Rufus King didn't make the website, did they do this because part of his narrative is he's this anti-slavery activist and he had actually enslaved this woman either for 9 months or a decade, so it might not look too good on the website to have, oh, enslaved, by the way, but he's an anti-slavery activist. So anyway, this is called Margaret Amir. It's sort of a cataloging with the different workers, and then we get to Margaret. Margaret Amir. And the village would be Jamaica, which we now know as Jamaica, Queens. I guess some people still call it a village. She was there from 1812 to 1829. He definitely emancipated her at some point. And he had gotten her as a part of a debt another white gentleman owed him, and she was given to him in his will. If anything else, I'll explain afterwards. Margaret Amir. Some slept at the manor, some resided in the village, some were seasonal. All were paid. We just rent in the 21st century glimpse. She cornered over the when and how of her time and dates, doing figure eights in the yard. Thomas thought of King's coach as a skate. When he was offered his walking papers, he poofed with King's Dalmatian, who was sometimes reduced to a black and white side-to-side shudder of body, tail like a fan, and head sounding considerate as a whip. The coachman reduced Rufus to quill and tears, to pleading for his dear pooch. The canine, his forelegs and tail, was returned intact. Hannah was written of as if a fixture, was a maid even during the King's Washington aways, was one whose dreams were hugged by all 4 walls of her manor bedroom walls, was inquired by in April letters, asked for after the fracture of her arm. Hetty would go to work with the soap. No, they did not toil together as suds. It was just a way of saying sponging down the house. Her dreams also secured by walls because her skull's bones were porous. But she was also of Thomas's fate, discussed equally only a year after the coachman and worked the same sliver of time. Sickness ushered a similar sibling to King Manor, a servant beckoned only with a surname, Valentine, a servant who hovered over the forest-longing garden, its natural gathering of vegetables and flowers, that gathering of remedies and scents from herbs that snuck into dinner's delicious windows, the trees to tend of apple and peach, of orchard and seed, and oats he was occasionally tasked to plant. Disputes of fruit that have not found a tree, as such, when an unnamed coachman and Valentine, who was only surname, got Rufus to fire the coachman that had neither a first or a last, to settle the new coachman for how he unsettled the manor's breath. Interesting, even after Rufus was in the earth, he still made others drudge, Dominic, Peter, and James, farmhands in an absence that would never know presence again. Seasonal Irish and repeatedly hired, but when Washington grew to be more than King's Whisper, their dismissals were gaudy and sumptuous. Even well after Rufus drifted horizontally through his stoic front door, there was still mention of Mary Gilroy, kitchen wizard, mention of the individual who started the years around or before and likely hunched through the Civil War, hunched through what Rufus knew would happen. The rubber band known as the Republic would snap, and over 600,000 lives along with it. She was 24, wee hours of the morning, half a day, and then one in the kitchen. Meals always caking the four corners of her Irish mind, one on the edge of her sickled right eyebrow, another at her left temple, one gifting her a crick on the devil's side of her neck, the other daring her ear to itch. Even from the grave, Rufus still dictated the terms as he had dictated in an 1808 letter that whomever cooked the meals must understand marketing and accounts. Meaning, when does a York shilling equal an apple, or remember stocks and bonds are just skinny cash crops? He insisted this frank death wish must go along with the dishes served. Last on the list, in those cockatoo green letters and digits, Margaret, a maid, Margaret, a mere, a seed tossed in for circa, no description of where and what she lived. Did she doze near the spotted curl of the lazing Dalmatian? Did she do a soft figure 4 scissor with the pup? Why such silence, or maybe why the mention, as if that information could be a printed enemy? So the browser, not a software program, not a windowless window, but a skimmer, a searcher, might know her name, her dates. But for those who knew Margaret had been enslaved to the senator, the ambassador, the framer, the anti-slavery activist, yet not the abolitionist, would someone hire some chaplets to split the difference? Might the web designer, the New York Georgian Manor House, the blue-eyed education coordinator have needed to squish Margaret's history because slave on their webpage would require much, much more than just a cut and paste to erase. I want to wish you the best during the holidays, and if you have any questions, if you don't want to ask them, I'll stand up here, we can chat on the side. Thank you so much.